Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome an innovative and accomplished entrepreneur from Switzerland, but talking to us today from Bali, Indonesia, Mr. Viktor Meier. Victor, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Victor is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Glice. So, Victor, before we start
Mm.
talking about life and entrepreneurship, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
So I was actually supposed to become a diplomat. So
Mhm.
I went to the Geneva Graduate Institute of International Studies, and I studied international politics, economics, history, and so on. And I wanted to become an ambassador. But soon I realized that the public work and to become a diplomat, it's very formal, and I'm very creative person, entrepreneurial. And so later, after my studies, I actually went on a around the world trip
Mhm.
for 18 months, really backpacking, learning different crafts. I was also in India for 2 months going around,
Mhm.
and I actually ended up in the US where I worked for a technology startup, and I really loved the startup world, creating stuff.
Mhm.
And so this bug stayed with me. And later, when I was in Switzerland working for a big healthcare corporation near Zurich, I knew I need to start something myself.
Mhm.
And it was actually by pure chance that I saw an interview with an inventor of this eco-friendly ice
Mhm.
on BBC. I saw the show, and when I saw that, I thought, oh, that's my thing. I love sports.
Mhm.
I love ecology. It combines it. And so what I did, I Googled this inventor's name. I contacted him and said, hey, such a cool product. I want to help you build a business around it. And so we met in person. I skated on his surface.
Mhm.
So he developed the material which looks like ice. It feels like ice, but it's not ice.
Oh,
But it
okay.
skates like a real ice. And you
Mhm.
don't need electricity nor water, which normally a regular ice rink,
Yeah.
it uses a lot of refrigeration. And
Mhm.
so it was amazing. And so we decided to start the company
Mhm.
50-50 shares in Switzerland. He focused on production, innovation, and I focused on commercial part, on marketing, sales, and the rest is history.
It's history, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what were some of the challenging, issues you faced while shifting from a stable career to the uncertainties of becoming an entrepreneur?
You know, from the beginning, you have this kind of almost fear.
Hmm.
It's a continuous companion. Like, will we manage to pull that off?
Hmm.
Cash, because we started with a capital of 100,000 Swiss francs,
Hmm.
which is approximately maybe in today's dollars like 120,000 US dollars.
Hmm.
And it was for what we want to do was not much, and we had to bootstrap. And yes, so it was just, yeah, continuous. And I remember this continued for the first 4 years around.
Hmm.
And I remember one day I was jogging, and I took a conscious decision to stop worrying. And somehow, I don't know how I did it, otherwise I could write a book about it, but somehow it made click, and I stopped worrying. And I just somehow, yeah. So for me, that I would say that was a big part. But of course, you always have difficulty,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
launching a new product. Our product honestly sounded almost too good to be true.
Hmm.
So people really had to see it, test it with their own feet at the beginning. So every sale at the beginning was a lot of effort. And
Hmm.
nowadays we get orders over the phone. They not even come test because
Hmm.
they trust us and our brand. And it, we have sold projects for over $1 million, and no one cared testing. So that's where we got to now. But
Oh,
at the
amazing.
beginning, even the smallest string took hours and weeks of testing and like that. Yeah,
Wow. And you did mention a little bit about what is eco-friendly about the ice rink. Tell me a little bit more about
yeah,
what makes the ice rink ice-free.
yeah. So if we have a conventional ice rink, you normally have tubings and they have cooling agents like liquids going through there, and these cooling agents are cooled down by a cooling machine, and so you have a lot of energy just to cool it down. You have these chemicals which sometimes they leak, they can be toxic. So the whole thing is very intensive on energy. Then also water. You have to add a ton of water from the beginning, and you have to keep adding. And then if you have a indoor ice rink, you have to have very good isolation. You cannot have direct sunlight. You have to have the right humidity and so on. So it's very energy infrastructure intensive.
Very interesting.
Whereas our product, it's a material. As I said, it looks like ice, it feels like ice. It's not ice. It doesn't melt. We can put it anywhere,
Mm.
any climate. Just to give you an example, we have done a glice rink on the beach in the Maldives
Wow.
or in Brazil. We
Mm.
have done rinks we just installed a project in Nigeria, Africa.
Hmm.
So it can be anywhere in any climate.
How interesting. And, a few minutes back, you were telling me how challenging it must have been to get your first order. Uh, what were some of these unique challenges? Today, of course, everyone is calling you on the phone and wants a Glice rink.
Mm.
What were some of the early challenges?
Um, because it was a new innovation. The first I didn't trust that it really works.
Mm.
Okay, and so what we always told them, come ice skate. And so we invited them to Switzerland to our office. We had a little ice rink set up
Mm.
and to see it for themselves. And then even if normally in an organization, or for example it's a municipality, there is always a champion who is innovative in their mind,
Mm.
but then he goes back to his people, and then he have some old-fashioned people who say, "What? Ice skating on a material which is not ice, that cannot work." So he have to convince
Mm.
them as well. So that was really hard at the beginning. It just
Mm.
get everyone in that entity on board with that, and we needed just convincing and
Yeah,
for us just having the endurance to say we'll get it done.
correct, correct. Great response.
Mm.
And you were also telling me that, initially there was funding challenges. How did you manage to scale Glice to over 100 countries with limited startup funds?
So I think as innovative as is our product, we were also innovative in the way we cut costs and use marketing. So we use PR. So when we set up a rink, we tried to contact some journalists and get free advertisement, and that actually worked so far that we were on CNN, New York Times, a full page article, and so on. So it was PR. Then we also became very, very strong in online marketing.
Hmm.
So we really used whatever technology is available, and until today, we always are in the lookout what is the latest marketing
Yeah.
technology to
Mm.
push our product, and
Very
that's
interesting.
how
Very.
we pulled it off. But also, as I being very humble.
Mm.
So at the beginning, I slept a lot of time in hostels,
Mm.
very cheap. And I remember one time I was in hostel, and I called my business partner, and I had to whisper, and he said, "Why are you whispering?" And I said, "Because I'm in a bunk bed and there are 10 other guys sleeping in the same room, so I cannot talk."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really cut the cost to the minimum so that the cash goes further.
Absolutely. What an amazing story. Thank
Mm.
you. And over the years, Victor, how has technology changed that goes into creating a Glice ring, and how has the product evolved?
So we've been doing R&D, continuously, but we realized that we got to a limit. So we had to hire
mm,
A scientist, for example, now who is in charge of innovation, who really understands it on a much more and like micro and nano level,
mhm,
and it's just yeah the right people. There's also a lot of innovation in nanotechnology
mm.
we can incorporate in our products.
Yes.
So basically keeping an open mind,
Mm,
use the new coming up technologies and using and working with the right people.
very interesting. And you also speak about this being eco-friendly. How do you approach the challenges of sustainability and environmental responsibility when it comes to Glice?
So, as said, our product itself is saving a lot of energy and water, but
Yeah.
we don't stop there. So, there's a lot of ways we can save. One example is our packaging.
Mm,
So we make sure that we try to eliminate plastics. We use wooden crates, boxes. Um, Also in transport, for example, we developed packaging where we can stack more so that we don't need so much truckload and so on. And then we don't stop there. We actually, for every glass panel, our ice comes in panels 1 by 2 meter.
mhm,
So we committed a few years ago that for every panel we produce, because there is some gray
mhm.
energy, so CO2 or energy for producing our panels. So we are planting 1 tree for every panel we produce. That's
Amazing.
our commitment, and
Fantastic.
this tree compensates for the
Fantastic.
production CO2.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And how do you talk to consumers or customers when you are introducing synthetic ice, if I can use that term,
Yeah.
as compared to a market for traditional ice skating rinks?
It's oftentimes, and that's the good thing, people hear about us on an article or so they come us
Mm,
come to us, and they already have like some understanding. But a lot of people, what they don't know is that
mm,
it's actually easier to learn to ice skate on glass than
mm,
on real ice, because intuitively people feel that it's safer. It's not so hard actually when you fall down. It's shock absorbing, so it doesn't hurt. When I was growing up in Switzerland, all my friends, they broke their arms or hands ice skating on glass. That's not happening. Also,
mm.
if you fall, you don't get wet, and so there are a lot of arguments apart from the cost, energy saving, which are advantages with
Oh,
our ice.
how amazing. So, Victor, I'm going to now move to some questions for you on general entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Um, and my first question is, what are some of the key attributes you believe make an entrepreneur successful, especially in the face of obstacles? And one thing you already told me was how you kept your costs very, very low.
Yes. For me, it's first of all, it's a mindset where you don't give up,
Mm,
and there will be always moments where you could potentially doubt yourself, or other people could doubt the way you go,
mm,
and that you can fail, especially at the beginning, right? Or if you face a major crisis, and people, a lot of people get paralyzed from obstacles,
mm.
and you should just have the confidence that you get through it. So yeah, you always have to have uh, yeah this very strong conviction that you get it done, and that there is always a way.
Yeah.
Where is an obstacle, there is a way. So I think that's a very important one. The
Mm,
second one is that um, you know, although people celebrate entrepreneurs as these self-made men, but you can never build a successful business yourself. You always need very good people around you,
yeah. Yeah.
and you should just always having the skill of finding good talent and training them, elevating them, also build their confidence so that they can do it. And it's one good person hired can save you so much work and trouble. It's incredible. So that should be a big
Fascinating.
focus.
And what lessons did you learn about perseverance and resilience Especially when you must have gone to in your early days and people would have said not interested.
Yeah. Um, my, my personal learning is that if you truly believe something, you always get it done. Maybe not exactly how we envisioned at the beginning, but
Mm,
there is always a way. And people after some time, even the big doubters, they will follow you
mm,
if you're just believing too much and
mm.
yeah, you have perseverance. Even the doubters will follow you at the end.
Very interesting. You also, were telling me that you've got Glice rinks all over the world. How did you adapt so quickly in such diverse and unfamiliar markets? Because you come from a country which is so well organized.
Very good question. And actually, yeah, as a Swiss, I had to learn to be adaptable because Swiss are very used that the bus comes exactly on time and everything. So I had to learn to be adaptive.
Mm,
But I must also say, and I traveled to many countries and so on. And all the humans in the world are actually much more similar than they are different. That is my insight.
yeah.
And although I know there are some intercultural courses where you learn how to give the business card to a Chinese like that or so, I think what people all over the world appreciate most is if you're 100% authentic.
Correct.
You're 100% yourself and you're truly interested in the other person,
Mm,
and their family, and so on. And then you don't need to adopt a behavior of another culture, like how to give a business card. Just be genuine, be yourself, and they appreciate you, and collaboration will work. So
mm,
I would say that's something. Be
mm,
just humble and very authentic.
amazing, amazing. And when you were going through your early stages, how do you keep on motivating yourself that your vision was something which would be maybe which would make Glice into a global brand and a big success?
Um, I would say just working with amazing people, and every day when I open my inbox, it's like a surprise box because there's a lot of things coming in. Of course, sometimes also trouble is looming, but oftentimes it's new opportunities. So for me, it's not very hard to stay motivated,
Hmm.
unless there is really some crisis or so. But um, just setting up an ice rink somewhere where they have never seen ice, and see the face and the smile of the kids and the people and going on that ice, it's so motivating. That's I pull from that energy even months after I've installed such a rink. So
Interesting.
yeah, for me, I don't have any motivation issues
Very
in that
interesting.
sense.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. So, I have time for a few more questions. What is the kind of feedback you have received from professional ice skaters or athletes who have used Glice?
So everyone who goes on Glice, the professional athletes, of obviously they feel that it's not exactly like ice. So you have a bit more. You need a bit more effort. So we did a speed test. So you lose around 2%,
Mhm.
and they feel that. But it's often they tell me it's actually, if they skate around, after 15 minutes they forget about it. And someone once told me something very similar. He said, like, if you buy a new car, the first minutes or half an hour, it feels weird, it feels different, but after some time, you
Mm,
get used to it and it's like normal. And
mm.
and so that's the feedback we get from professional
Fascinating.
skaters.
Fascinating. And my last question for you. What is the advice you would give to people who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs?
I would say, like, first, if you have an idea, um, a nice, wealthy idea, talk with different people, get feedback
Mm,
on your concept. So
mm,
make sure that it's commercially
mm,
viable.
mm.
That's the first one, and then second is put your whole soul into it. You cannot do half things. right? So you really need to go all for it, and you might have doubters and just pull through, okay? But as I said, make first sure that the basics, the concept on a basic level make sense.
Wow. And on that note, and your two wonderful lessons, go for your idea only after you have vetted it, that it's commercially viable. And once you know that it is correct, put your whole soul into it. Thank you, Victor, for speaking to me about your own journey. I think
Thanks.
I didn't know about Glice, but I learned many new things about Glice, which is not only eco-friendly, but it gives you an absolutely identical skating experience to an ice skating rink. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you for having me here with you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.